You are about to find out whether take home assignments are a fair or flawed practice in product management hiring. Watch closely as two experienced product mentors discuss what the future of hiring product managers should look like. Because while you may attract the right talent, choosing the wrong approach may make them abandon your hiring process. What can make your next interview process a successful one, and what candidates truly think about the way you interview them? What do these mentors know that we don't? Our debaters know both sides of the argument inside out, and in this debate, that we share with you all the do's and the don'ts you need to know in order to create a hiring experience that works. Arguing for take home assignments, Arik Gaisler, co founder and CTO at a stealth startup and product league mentor. Arguing against take home assignments, Roni Moses, product manager at Igentify and product league mentor. We begin with opening statements from both speakers.
So hi, my name is Arik. I'm here to talk about the pros and advantages of having a take-home assignment as part of an interview process. I believe that take-home assignments really showcase critical skills that, you know, traditional interviews, whether in-person interviews or online kind of like time-contained interviews, can just not properly assess. Skills like written communication skills, different approaches to problem solving, and different traits of curiosity, which is an important trait of product managers, and really gives us as hiring managers and candidates the ability to showcase those skills in a more practical and non-theoretical way.
Hi, my name's Roni, and I'm a product manager at Igentify. I've been a product manager for quite some time, and I've worked at several different companies. Today, I'm going to represent the opinion against homework assignments. Homework assignments are a terrible way to assess potential candidates. The inequitable time demands on candidates, the ability to represent real work situations, it's an opportunity for them to outsource and doesn't give a representation of what they'll actually be like on the job. There are wonderful ways of assessing candidates within the framework of the interview process, and I think that they're much more efficient than the home assignment.
Welcome to the debate. Let's start with our first topic, time flexibility versus fairness in assessment. Ronnie, you argue that take home assignments create an uneven playing field. Why is that?
I'd like to start by saying that homework assignments are an inclusionary practice. They are very time demanding. Many times, companies will give an assignment with a statement that this should take between 4 to 6 hours or something of the sort. But for a product manager to do a homework assignment or even multiple homework assignments during their interview processes at several companies, it could be very demanding, especially if the product manager is already employed, may have family responsibilities or other responsibilities that they need to tend to, and it might not be realistic for them to put so much time and effort into speculative work. This could cause an unfair advantage for those candidates who have the time and the ability to put the time needed. And as many of us who have done home assignments know, that the 4 to 6 hour estimate is usually greatly understated.
Yeah, I think that I do think that makes sense. But when you put that up against scheduling multiple interviews or scheduling multiple, whether in-person interviews or remote interviews, which also take the time to block off the time during the day, again, with multiple companies and so on, there's not that much of a difference. I do agree that when you give a take-home assignment, it should be thoughtful, and you should work together with the candidates to assess the time. For instance, when I give take-home assignments, I have kind of like in my mind how many days it should take or how many hours it should take. Of course, I also kind of like talk with the candidate and see how long they think it should take them after they see the assignment. And as any interview, as any assignment, it should be done thoughtfully. But I do think the importance of having a take-home assignment is really kind of like also building off of something that you just said. It's really being able to practically test some skills. An interview, an in-person interview, or kind of like a time-contained 45-minute interview is not practical. That's not how work gets done as a product manager. You're not given 45 minutes to solve a problem. You're given a problem, and then you're off to your own, kind of like to problem solve it or to attach it in your own unique way. I think different product managers have different approaches to problem solving. And I think that take home assignment actually is inclusive in the fact that it gives people the freedom to problem solve in whatever way they see fit or whatever the way they're comfortable with. And some PMs like to put on headphones to kind of like think about a problem. Some PMs like to take a walk and try and solve a problem. Some people like to write down stuff and solve a problem. And so kind of like in the overall scheme of things, I think it's actually more inclusionary than exclusionary in that front.
I don't disagree with you that the assignment is a good way to gauge product managers, especially when we're talking about junior positions. I think that for senior positions, there's a lot more leadership that can't really be represented through the assignments that are usually given. But I do think that there is room to consider an in-office assignment. I've actually seen it several times where the interviewee has informed me ahead of time, this is going to be 2 hours. The first hour, I was given an assignment seated in a room on my own with a laptop. I had the same 1 hour to work on the assignment that the other candidates. It created a much more level playing field. And I think that that's a better way to do the home assignment than actually giving it at home with an unlimited time period and unlimited uh, capabilities. Because here you're actually getting everyone's had the same hour, the same computer, internet, the same minimal abilities to do it in. And then when you come in after that hour, you could actually discuss their thought process. It is a lot more raw, but because you want to see the thought process, this is a good time to talk about what went on, what they did, what they thought to do, and to see where they got within an hour, which is also a measurement that even if you expect them, yeah, to take 4 to 6 hours, 2 days, whatever, if they took a week, you don't know that necessarily.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that. First of all, I agree regarding the second part on, the need to present your take home assignment afterwards and coming not just kind of like submitting it and then forgetting about it or kind of like not having any kind of follow up to it, because that's an important part. Especially, I think you brought up earlier, kind of some people can maybe use that time to outsource or kind of like use certain tools, which by the way, I have zero problems with someone kind of like using AI or something like that, or kind of like even outsourcing in some scenarios, as long as they know what they're talking about and they can explain it to me. And that's what that second part tests. I'll ask them to kind of like present it. I'll ask them to kind of like talk about the take home assignment to know, regardless around how they did it, whatever tools they use, whether they use their own experience or relied on people and kind of like did interviews or whatever. I want them to kind of like to be able to talk about it. And I'm not sure I understand what that hour kind of like before solved, because one of the values that I see in a take home assignment is giving the freedom of spending as much time as you think you should be spending on this part of problem. And this is also what I'm kind of testing as part of the interview process. I want to see, okay, you have a problem. Do you have a methodology, kind of like a method to kind of like to break it down and be able to correctly assess, okay, this is something that's going to take me a week. This is something that's going to take me 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever. And because I really want to test out real world scenarios. There's no real world scenario where you're given 1 hour to solve a problem and that's all you're given. And that's how the majority of interviews work. They just work. You're given whatever, 30 minutes, you have a few questions, you need to answer them, and that's it. Nothing works like that in the real world. Um, and I think that that experience of kind of like giving that time, giving that space to kind of like solve that problem is one of the only measurements that we have as part of an interview process of kind of like real world capabilities.
PM hiring is evolving. Stay ahead by subscribing now. And if you enjoy this debate, give it a like. Now, let's dive into our second topic. Should hiring assessments follow a structured format or should they allow for creative problem solving? Arik, you go first.
I think one of the core skills of a product manager, and especially in a time where hybrid work and or fully remote work is very much prevalent, is the ability to communicate in written form and then present that written form as well. And it's something that just is very hard to test out, kind of like in a 30-minute, 45-minute, even an hour kind of scenario. And I think it's a critical skill that is not tested enough during an interview process.
I understand what you're saying, but I disagree. First of all, I still think that the unlimited time frame is not a reflection of real world scenarios. Even in the real world, I don't have unlimited time to work on what I need to next develop. From sprint to sprint, from PI to PI, I have a limited time frame. I have a limited amount of attention that I could give this. And again, when you do let people take home the assignments, then you don't know if they're doing it in 2 hours or 40 hours. And you're giving here an unfair playing field and an unfair advantage to those who have the ability to put more time and effort into it. Regarding the ability to check how a person communicates, a product manager communicates, during the interview process, you can give them um, examples of create, a short 3-slide presentation of this, a 5-slide presentation of this, to do on the spot. Yes, give them 10 minutes to write out 3, 5 slides. It doesn't have to be something, you know, extravagant, but it will give you the ability to see how they communicate. Are they a word per slide person? Are they somebody who just throws everything they have onto the slide? Um, and then have them present those slides. It's not um, just because it's 3 slides or 5 slides doesn't mean you won't get to gauge how they correspond and how they present material to others.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense. One of, you just said earlier that kind of it's hard to see how much time they took. I mean, obviously, I know how much they took just by how long it took them to actually complete it, and I asked them to tell me when they completed. Also, just to be clear, this is in no way unlimited time. I mean, there is a time frame to it. I think that time frame is more realistic to the real world. I've hardly seen real world scenario where you're expected to give an answer to something or to problem solve something within an hour. I frequently see, okay, you have a couple of days, like in a sprint or whatever, 2, 3 days, just to suggest a way forward. That's way more realistic, and that's kind of like the typical time frame of take-home assignments. Of course, neither of them are perfect, and kind of like neither of them are exactly like the real world. I just think that the take-home time frame is a little bit more closer to the real world one. I think what you kind of like suggested for written communication, kind of like testing during kind of like a 10-minute or 15-minute, sounds super stressful to me to kind of like to be put on the spot and said, hey, make a presentation for me in 10, 15 minutes. And again, it doesn't test anything that's done in real world and kind of like in real life scenario. That's never part of, at least that I've seen, never part of kind of like a job to prepare something in 10 minutes.
You
And
told to present something to the board in 10 minutes, oh, the board is meeting. They want to see some slides on.
on something that I don't know anything about, like something that have just been presented, no. And if I would, then I would probably say, hey, give me a little bit of background or kind of like give me a little bit of information, or maybe I can't do it because, I won't present to a board like within 10 minutes notice on something that I don't know about. Of course, on the job, I have experience in something, so I'm probably not just pulling it out of nowhere. I have some materials, but to make something from scratch in 10 minutes, very hard, and probably the result would not be something that I would be hired based off of. Let's put it that way.
You could always tell about previous experience, tell about a project, a 5-slide presentation about a project that you did that you were proud of, and then hopefully it is something that they are, you know, well versed in what they did.
But that's exactly the difference. I mean, when I talk about my previous experience or I say something theoretical about something that I know about, it's very, very different than actually doing it. Where I can still build on the same previous experience, but I actually have output to show. And I'm given the time to actually present that output. And I think there's a real difference. And I think also earlier you talked a little bit about the differences between juniors and kind of like more senior kind of like hires. And I actually think that take home exercises are even more relevant for more senior challenges, for more senior, sorry, hires, because it's also a great way to test out more experience based soft skills. I'll give an example. I know that I've been given for, whether it's director and up or VP or kind of like CTO, CPO level roles, and take home assignments around org design, for instance, which is a very broad question and very, really relies upon experience, but also relies around, okay, tell me how you present this to the organization. It's kind of like a combination of both soft skills, hard skills, and the ability to kind of to convey that to multiple stakeholders, which in 30, 45-minute interviews is just very, very hard to assess. And how can you convey that to kind of like different stakeholders? How do you write it? How do you output it? How do you talk about it? Without only relying on a person's past experience and kind of like just assuming that what they're saying is accurate. In order to actually see it and see the output, um, a take-home assignment is a very good way to test that out and more executive and kind of like senior hires.
For executive, I agree, but for a senior product manager where they wouldn't be doing something like organizational charts, I don't think it's very relevant. I don't think that the soft skills can be efficiently gauged through a homework assignment. I think that there a lot more relies on previous experience, on what they bring from previous employees and getting feedback from previous employers of theirs is a lot more relevant. Um, and really putting in the effort to gauge their soft skills during the interview process, asking questions, understanding how they've handled situations. There are ways to assess soft skills quite well during an interview process.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I do completely agree that there are ways to kind of like to assess soft skills and of course behavioral interviews and stuff like that are things that exist. I think that this is just another tool that is just way more accurate, can be if it's done right, kind of like more accurate and provide kind of like another facet essentially to assessing soft skills for the org design previously was just an example. I think for another example of kind of like a case study that I've given to senior kind of like ICs, senior PMs, which I think is another core skill that a senior PM has, for instance, is collaboration with your engineering team or collaboration with different stakeholders. For instance, a good take-home test that I think a good one that I've given in the past is how do you handle tech debt and how do you convey the needs to tackle on tech debt to non-technical stakeholders and how you present that. And I know that I gave that take-home assignment where essentially the take-home assignment was, here's what engineering says, these are the different reasons that they said, here's your roadmap. You know that you would probably need to kind of like to spend some time on tech debt. How do you, output a presentation or a document, whatever you want, to convey to non-technical C-suite executives to make a decision. That's kind of like the simplified and kind of like high level of a take-home exercise. And I gave that because I found it difficult to, in a 30-minute, 45-minute kind of like interview, to really get output. Could I actually have kind of like a document that kind of like I can get persuaded as whatever, as kind of like a senior person on the job, that we need to tackle that tech debt. And when I gave that exercise, I thought that, okay, I'm actually seeing output that can actually persuade me to do that, and I'm actually more confident in this hire because these are challenges that happen, on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis in a company. And I just feel more confident that this person is going to excel at this role. And and that's essentially what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build confidence both in myself and with the candidates around the role, around the requirements, around what's needed to be done on the job.
I think that's a great example of something that is a take home assignment as you gave it, but could be done in office. You could tell the candidate, I'd like to discuss with you your experience with tech debt during the interview. Please schedule 2 hours. Give them the first 45 minutes, hour to sit, create a presentation, talk about their experience with tech debt in the past. Bring some of your dev team, bring some non technical people, and have them present. And then you're still getting their opinion, their ability to create a presentation, their ability to talk and try to convince people why the tech debt is important, how it fits into the roadmap. But they're coming from a place where they were prepared because you gave them advance notice. During the interview, we'll be talking about tech debt that you've experienced in the past, and yet you didn't give them too much information so that some of it is done, yes, spontaneously, and you do see how they work under pressure. Part of being a good PM is also the ability to work under pressure, to be able to uh, take something that you're familiar with, but suddenly you have to change things, or you have to be agile, you have to be dynamic, and being able to handle that and have things thrown at them with little notice would give a very similar effect.
The debate is heating up. Who is making the stronger case so far? Arik or Roni? Let us know your current stance in the chat. Our final topic: do take home assignments create barriers or do they allow for deeper evaluation? Roni, you go first.
If the person is interviewing at more than one company, then they don't only have your take home assignment, they may have 2 or 3 consecutive take home assignments if they're being interviewed at several places at the same time. And usually people do try to interview at several places at the same time so that when offer time comes around, they'll have offers at the same time and will be able to choose um, without having to keep any offer, you know, on standby. I just need 2 more weeks. I need another week.
So again, regarding kind of like the multiple interview and stuff like that, I can't control what I can't control. I understand that they have kind of like other interviews. That's fine. What I can do is be thoughtful about it. And I think that you need to be thoughtful regardless of what interview you do. If they can't do it, I'll ask them. I'll ask them, do you have the time to do it? When can you do it? When kind of do you think that you can do it? And if they're telling me, listen, I have 2 more that I need to submit this week, I'll tell them, okay, that's fine. Let's do it next week. It's okay. And then maybe I'll do the other interview that I have in the meantime. You always need to be thoughtful throughout your interview process, but I can't control what I can't control. I 100% agree that a big part of the interview process should test out stuff like agility and how you work with new information, stuff like that. And that's honestly, regardless of like the take-home exercise, that's the majority of the interview process. The majority of any interview process is 30 to 45-minute meetings where you just ask the person questions that they had no idea they're going to get asked. So, that's for sure being tested throughout the process. I don't personally feel that I need another opportunity to test that. And that's not the purpose of the take-home assignment. The take-home assignment is to test out more kind of like core deep skills that are just I see are not tested out in other interview scenarios. And again, going back to kind of like giving that person just like that hour or 45 minutes that you said to kind of like to think about the problem and present it, that just doesn't happen. Or especially, looking at this specific example, the tech debt thing, it's a planning exercise at the end of the day. It's usually done as part of either your quality planning or your monthly planning, whatever part of planning that you do. You have the what I'm looking for them is kind of like for them to be able to tell me what are the questions they're going to ask, what are the methods that they're going to use to tackle it, and to write up something in the time that they need to actually present that um, to whatever stakeholders they need to present it as part of like the exercise. 35 minutes is something not realistic, I think, to get a good, proper measurement of that specific assignment. I'm not trying to test out agility here. I'm not trying to test out how do you deal with kind of like new data or surprising data. I'm really trying to assess real world product management skills that you'll be using on the job.
Okay.
May I? Or you have something to add, Roni?
I was gonna add something else, but so go ahead, and then I'll jump right in. Okay. I do want to add one more thing. Here you have an unfair advantage also to candidates who have come from a friend within the company. Many times they can provide insights or additional information that wouldn't be available to other candidates, and it does give an unfair advantage.
Um, yes, I get that. First, the take-home assignment, usually it shouldn't be on specific company, details or problem. Just I don't think it should be as specific. It should be related to what we're doing as a company, but it shouldn't give an advantage to someone that's coming in from the company or something like that. I will say that inherently someone that either comes from the company or is being are you talking about people that are promoted internally or people that are friends with people that work in the company?
People that are friends with. I've seen many times take home assignments or things that are currently being worked on within the company. So, how would you solve this problem? This is, we're thinking of creating a feature that does X. How would you solve this problem? And luckily, my friend Joe is a developer. They've discussed several solutions. I already know which one they've selected. He's given me, their insight into why they've selected this, and I could present my presentation a lot more around that. Um, so
Nope.
do you think that assignments that are related to things that are currently being done within the company are a bit problematic? I think that there's also an opportunity for a little bit of fun here. I have seen several companies that do offer um, things that are a bit more off the wall that have been interesting and not related to what they do, but they have um, given me the opportunity to show my skills as a creative, KPI oriented product manager. And I think that it gave both of us a feeling that I wasn't doing unpaid work for them and they were able to gauge me as a product manager.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree that you shouldn't be giving a take-home assignment of literally solving a problem they have right now. That absolutely should not be done. And I will say that it's pretty hard to come up with a good take-home assignment. It's not easy. Because you do want to give something that's related at least to the business domain. It's not something that we're working on right now that is related somehow to what we're doing and I can actually test out the skills. It's very hard. And it seems like you actually had like a good experience with that in a take home.
So I disagree with it should be within the domain. I interviewed for a car safety company, and it was in the midst of COVID. They told me solve how do people with COVID take their dogs on walk. It was a very, very simple solution, an app, something like, Uber, but I actually took the opportunity to let my creativity shine. I went far out, brought in the Boston Scientific robotic dogs. Yeah.
Admit you got a good take home assignment experience. And I said, those are exactly, that's exactly what, because here you got to actually showcase skills that you wouldn't have been able to showcase in a regular interview. You had the time to actually present. You had the time to think about it, to present it, to think about creative solutions, and try to set it in a way that's very unique to yourself.
It actually wasn't a one assignment. It was given to me in office. I was wearing a mask because, like I said, it was in the midst of COVID. They even gave me gloves so that I wouldn't touch the laptop with my own fingers. Uh, I did the presentation in 45 minutes, and then with the last 10 minutes, I created a POC for an Uber-like experience with the concierge behind the scenes. And then after I did my presentation, I was like, okay, and if you want something out in the market tomorrow, here it is, mic drop. It's a lot more effective when you could actually drop a mic instead of saying mic drop in the middle of an interview, but still fun.
Yeah, that's all I could get experience. I think that could have been take-home experience as well as kind of like an in-person experience, different results. And regardless, I mean, if it's in the domain or out of domain, I think it depends on a specific company. I personally like to give something that's adjacent. For instance, if I'm working in like an ad tech company at the moment, I want to probably see how the person deals with data or how the person deals with, personalization and stuff like that. So maybe not in the ad tech domain, but something that tackles something like that. Uh, with their own kind of like problem solving kind of like skills and with their own kind of like approach to it. A common trait for kind of like successful PMs or kind of like PMs that do well in their roles, exciting their roles is curiosity. It's kind of the ability to really go deep on something and kind of like have obviously time kind of like to go deep and especially being curious about something that you weren't necessarily curious about a month ago. It's something new. It's something that you kind of like need to build that curiosity. And I found it very challenging to kind of like to assess that and be able to really find that little spark in online or kind of like in-person time-contained interviews. So something that I'm really looking for when I do give a take-home assignment or when I get a take-home assignment and I like to showcase for myself is asking questions, taking the time to even think about what the questions are. In a, in an in-person interview or kind of like an online time-contained interview, of course you have the opportunity to ask questions, but you're still kind of like on the spot to ask them. Sometimes I need to read a little bit about this domain or about this topic just to know what to ask, just to understand who are the stakeholders, what am I dealing with, what is this domain, what am I trying to learn right now, and then do research on the company, do research on kind of like this specific domain, and that's something that I think kind of like separates really really strong kind of like PMs that will excel at the role versus PMs that are here to do a job. And that's something that I look for, and something that I am looking for as part of the preparation process of a take-home exercise, take-home assignment that I don't think that I can really get in kind of like in a time contained, kind of like in person or online interview.
I'm surprised because I think that's part of preparing for the interview process. I don't think I've ever passed an initial phone call where I haven't started diving deep into what the company does, what their domain is, who are their competitors. I come to interviews where I know who they are, what their main problems are, or at least I could assume from what I've learned on the internet and online and from their competitors what the main issues that stand in front of them for the upcoming year or upcoming time period. And I would expect someone to come with this readiness already to the interview process. And as for gauging how depth people like to go, I think that asking about them, getting to know them a little bit more on a personal level, their hobbies, even after um, one or two interviews, talking to them a little bit more, you could gauge quite well how do they really dive into things or are they here to do the job? Are they here to, okay, I know a little bit about this. This is enough.
Yeah, I mean, though the difference between going deep into a company, which you said, and I 100% agree with. I mean, obviously, I'm looking for people that are interested in my company and are interested in kind of like what we're doing and, or have shown the willingness to kind of dive into the company and our domain. there's a difference between that, which is absolutely a given, versus having a problem and digging into a problem or digging into a specific domain that I present them in a take-home assignment and digging into that and understanding that area and researching a specific area or researching a specific problem and showing curiosity to learn how to best approach it. Might be multiple approaches or kind of like multiple ways that they're researching how people solved it in the past and stuff like that. Um, which again, I don't think there's a better way to do that outside of a more fluid kind of space to solve that. I kind of like to showcase that.
It takes me back to the inequitable time difference, the working parent who's got two small kids and is interviewing at two or three different places may not have the luxury of diving deep. And if you say this should take, 2 days, send it back to me by the end of the week or the start of next week, they might not have the ability to dive in as deep as they would like. And they may not be representing their skill set as it should be and with all the gravitas that it should get.
Yeah. So again, you have to be thoughtful when you do it. You have to have a conversation with the person when you give the assignment. Make sure they understand it. Make sure we're aligned on the time frame. That's fine. And it's always it's always it's always this against something else. So I think this is a better way versus just the standard 45 minutes to be able to showcase that. And it's a better way for them to be able to dive into it versus just giving you Evan Howard to solve this and kind of like give them the capability to even work around their own time schedule and use that exact same hour or 2 hours or whatever that they need just in their own schedule when they can actually do it and then make sure that they can like showcase that bit to the best of their ability. And I just think it's a better, it gives them a better time frame, gives kind of like a better opportunity for people to showcase that capability, which being under pressure is not the best way to kind of like to be able to showcase that. Being under pressure is it undermines that you're trying to actually convey.
Have you ever hired a candidate that said, "Sorry, I honestly didn't have enough time to work on this presentation"?
That's interesting. I have actually, because when they told me that they haven't been able to do it, they actually showed me something and they told me this was what I was able to do. But they were able to showcase to me and kind of like show that they did dig deep where they were able to dig deep. They were curious about it. They did build on their experience. They did write it in a way and kind of convey it in a way that, at least for the portion that they did do, they were able to kind of to make me understand what they were trying to do. And it's less about the finished result. And I make sure to to set that expectations up front. I want to see, given this time frame, what are you able to do? Let's work together to understand what that time frame is and understand what you're able to do in that time frame. Mm, it's funny. The example that I gave earlier around kind of tech that actually someone in that process actually wasn't able to quote unquote complete it. Kind of like they thought that they didn't complete it, but actually ended up hiring that person. They did actually did a great job. Mm, but it's all about kind of like being able to showcase skills that are just you're not able to showcase in different environments. Being able to write something up, being able to think about something more than a given time frame, and being able to problem solve something in a way that you're comfortable problem solving. There's no way, in my opinion, to do that in a time box, in a rigid time box kind of like environment.
Before we wrap up, we asked each debater two final questions. When is your approach not the best choice? Are there specific situations where the alternative method might be the smarter pick?
So going back to also one of the cons of home assignment that Roni that you point out around, I guess, inequality. So of course I acknowledge that. Of course I acknowledge that there are situations where people don't have time to do it. And there have been scenarios where I've talked to people and kind of like they told me, listen, I absolutely do not kind of like have time to kind of like take these whatever 2 or 3 days to complete this or whatever the time is necessary to do it. And then sure, I'll bring that person in for a time contained kind of like 1 or 2 hours. I might do something else that is equivalent to this test. Obviously, I don't want to be unfair to other candidates as well. And I've done that before. And I think it could happen. I will say that in most cases, I'm able to come to a solution. I'm able to come to a solution with the person and saying that, this is the time frame that you'll need to solve it at home and take that time and do it. But there have been cases when I acknowledged it and they could come in and kind of like do the thing in person.
Okay. If I look at an opportunity where I think that it's not beneficial to dismiss the home assignment, I think it's during interviews for junior PMs, possibly people who are in their first role. And if they're already working at a company and can't bring on people to give recommendations on their behalf, it may be a possible way to gauge the quality of their work without having to ask previous bosses, about their experience working with this junior product manager.
Who thrives under your method? What type of product management candidates excel in your approach, and what makes them the ideal fit?
I think that this interview process would work well for a broad type of interviewers, but I think it's especially helpful for those who are looking for a PM who is fast on their feet, creative, agile, who has a lot of experience that they could pull from. And from the interviewee point of view, I think this is best for interviewees who also come with a plethora of experience, creativity, the ability to think fast and organize their ideas. They have to be organized. They have to be able to express themselves quickly and efficiently. And it's also leveling the playing field for those who are currently employed, have families or other um, things that they can't put in the 40, 50, 60 hours that they need to get 2, 3 home assignments done in a week of intensive interviews.
Yeah, first of all, I think that the majority of the interview process today checks for kind of being able to work under pressure and stuff like that. And I definitely think that's one of the most important things to test. And regardless of the home assignment or not, that's something that's tested throughout the interview process. I think a take home assignment, the best personas kind of like that'll excel at this is PMs from a PM perspective, from a candidate perspective, is PMs that are able to kind of like are curious, are able to dig into problems, are able to dig into challenges, are not afraid of asking questions after they've learned a little bit about something, and are not afraid to kind of like to challenge themselves, to challenge the quest, to challenge the actual problem itself, and kind of like to ask questions about it. And it's usually PMs that have a good way to communicate, that have good skills in terms of communication, written, of course, because usually the output of a home assignment is in written form. And then usually there's a follow up to actually explain what you've written. And I think that PMs that will excel here are PMs that can communicate very well, regardless if they're junior PMs or more experienced PM or more executive leaders. It's a skill that you need to have in order to be a good PM, regardless if you're junior, not junior, or more experienced. And and I think that that kind of skill really shines as part of the home assignment.
Want to ask our debaters your own questions? Jump into the comments and challenge their views. Now, our debaters, Arik and Roni, will deliver the closing statements.
To reiterate, I am against homework assignments. I think that there are enough ways to test candidates within the interview process. I think that you could offer longer interviews, in office assignments, I think that you could create more interviews or more steps in the interview process, but take home assignments are not necessarily the best way. It gives candidates an advantage or disadvantage based on their available time, available resources, knowledge of the company. It's not necessarily a reflection of their skills. They could be using tools or information from friends who work within the company to get information that could be beneficial to them within the assignment. And other candidates may not have that available knowledge. And it's also not necessarily a representation of what and how they will be in office, be in real world situations. And there are ways to test many things that Arik has mentioned without the homework assignment. I have had several interview processes that did not have the homework assignment as part of them. They have taken other ways of looking at me as a person, as a team member, as a product manager, and they have assessed me. There have been places that I've worked at successfully for many years that I've been happy. They've been happy with me, and just like I've had many of these experiences, I know many other product managers who've been hired without a homework assignment and had wonderful interview processes as well.
Awesome. And so just to recap kind of um, my arguments for home assignments part of an interview process, I believe that home assignments is one of the only ways to assess certain skills that are critical for a successful PM and critical for PMs to excel at their role, which is just hard to assess during very time contained in person or online interviews. Skills such as written communication and presentation of that written communication skills, um, different styles of problem solving. I actually think that home assignments gives way for more inclusion of different problem solving methods and less pressure to problem solve something because a candidate can problem solve or dig into a challenge in a way that they see fit. As well as being able to showcase what I believe to be is one of the most important traits of a PM, curiosity, being able to ask questions that don't necessarily come up on the spot, but after you've taken some time to think about a problem and really do some research and dig into a problem, which is a core aspect of a successful PM. Um, and really, it's all meant to kind of like to get as much confidence as possible. When a company or someone is hiring someone, they're taking a risk. When a candidate joins a company, they're also taking a risk. Being able to see what kind of problem am I going to solve from the candidate's perspective and how are they accepted, as well as from the company's perspective, actually see how a person problem solves, how they tackle a problem, how they dig into a problem, just builds that confidence and increases the chances of success for that specific hire from both ends.
Want more debates on hot product management topics? Smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss out. Do you agree with Ronnie or with Arik? Let us know in the comments. Keep the conversation going. Your voice matters in shaping the future of product management hiring. See you next time.